Let's hear from royal expert, historian and friend of the show, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Tessa, thank you so much for joining us. Every time we talk about Harry and Meghan, it feels like there are resonances through history, but there's no precedent for exactly this situation and how we respond to them as a nation. Coming back to the country is something we never saw, for instance, from Edward VIII, was it? He never came back to the country with Mrs Simpson, and we don't know what that role looks like, do we?
He was very deliberately, in many respects, exiled. And I think it's always left rather an unpleasant taste in the palate of the royal family's history. And I think this is a terrific move. It's a day of good news all round. 3 lions haven't come home, but a quartet of prince and princesses are. And it casts Britain in, I think, a very flattering light. It may well be that against a sort of chart of checks and balances, Harry and Meghan have worked out that actually they're probably safer out of Trump's gun-touting America and better off in Britain for the short term at least, if only to spend time with his old father and to reacquaint himself with his country of birth. But it's bigger than that in terms of us holding on to that precious vase of good PR, of preferable optics. And if that means that actually we broaden or, if you like, slacken our girth and find space for paying for some of Harry's security, so be it. He is a prince. You can take a prince out of a palace. You can't actually remove that birthright from him or the celebrity, knotted, thorny issue that it is that comes with it. And I think that it's interesting. James briefly referred to this, that actually other royals are given security, that there is no sum. We don't know how much money, you can't freedom of information it. We don't know how much money it costs us, the nation, to keep our royals secure. And so would it be so disastrous if we just, added the cost of keeping Harry and Meghan safe onto that bill at the end of every year? I don't think so.
I think critics, though, of Harry and Meghan might say, well, it's another stick to beat the royals with. If the security doesn't live up to what they expect or compare to what maybe other royals are getting, that's the moment at which they kick off and suddenly things aren't rosy, in the way that they should be.
The last thing I want is to encourage or find a fissure via which this couple can be hounded once more. I think the last few weeks have reminded all of us that it is not okay to hound individuals. And if that means that let's not put the security question in the headlights, then fair play. But actually, there will have been and there will be going forward conversations, RAVEC and beyond, about how we make sure this couple are kept safe and the bill lands fairly on the respective parties. I'm sure I don't need to remind you that, for example, former Prince Andrew's daughters receive free accommodation in Kensington Palace and St James's Palace, respectively, both of which have inbuilt security. Harry and Meghan have chosen to foot their own bill and pay for their own private residence, i.e. it won't come with that inbuilt security that, for example, also Andrew gets, courtesy of being on his brother's private estate, Sandringham. And therefore, I think we need to recognise there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there. Hang on a minute. So Eugenie and Beatrice, non-working royals, do get inbuilt security in their residences, and Harry and Meghan won't get that. It doesn't, I don't think, sit fairly, and it needs to be addressed. We're not the ones to address it, but it's okay to say, make sure this is dealt with swiftly and dealt with fairly.
Squaddies, I need you to sit down for this one, because something happened on live British television that almost never happens. A royal historian, not a Sussex Squad member, not a Harry and Meghan Stan account, an actual credentialed royal historian who's built her whole career being neutral about this family, got on air, was asked a routine, slightly loaded question about whether Harry and Meghan deserve taxpayer-funded security. And instead of doing the usual hedge and flinch routine we're used to from rota-adjacent commentators, she told the truth. On air, in real time. And then she went further and named the exact double standard we've been screaming about for years. Let's get into it. So the setup here is a panel debate, the kind of format where they wheel out 2 balanced voices to argue past each other while the host nods along. James, one of the panelists, opens with what sounds like sympathy, but is actually the classic pivot. Yes, Harry was born into this. Yes, the kids didn't ask for it, but, and here it comes, Harry is of means. He bought an £11 million house. He's personally profiting from stepping back, so why should the taxpayer foot the bill for his safety? This is the argument you've heard 1,000 times. It sounds reasonable on the surface. It's designed to sound reasonable. But watch what it does. It quietly reframes a security question, which is about risk, into a wealth question, which is about envy. Harry's threat level didn't change because he signed a Netflix deal. The Ravec review found what it found, regardless of his mortgage. But he's rich, why should we pay? Hits differently than an actual government risk panel downgraded a father of two's protection. So guess which framing gets airtime? That's the steelman. Here's the pivot, and it comes from someone you wouldn't expect. Enter Dr. Tessa Dunlop, royal historian, regular on this exact kind of panel, someone whose entire professional credibility depends on her not being seen as biased toward the Sussexes. And what does she do? She calls the reunion good news. Full stop. No caveat, no but. She says, and I'm paraphrasing her because we don't reproduce broadcast transcripts word for word here, that the family being back together casts the country in a genuinely flattering light, that there's something worth protecting in the optics of reconciliation, not something to be begrudged. But that's not even the part that matters most. Here's the part I need every squaddie watching to clip, screenshot and remember the next time someone in your comments says, well, actually, the royal family treats everyone the same. Dr. Dunlop points out, on air, unprompted, that non-working royals like Eugenie and Beatrice receive free accommodation at Kensington Palace and St James's Palace. Both locations come with built-in permanent security infrastructure. It's baked into the address. You don't have to apply for it, debate it, or win a legal case for it. It's just there because of where you live. Harry and Meghan chose, and this is the key word chose, to fund their own private residence, which means no inherited security infrastructure, no built-in protection that comes bundled with the postcode. They pay for their own home, and as a direct consequence of that independence, they don't get the automatic safety net that other non-working royals get simply by staying on royal property. Dr. Dunlop's own words for this, and I'm going to use the phrase she used because it's too good not to name-check, cognitive dissonance. She says it plainly. It doesn't sit fairly. It needs to be addressed. Sit with that for a second. This is not a Sussex Squad talking point. This is not something we invented. This is a royal historian live on a panel designed to generate both sides debate content, calmly dismantling the they get everything for free narrative by pointing out that the family members who stayed close to the institution get security for free by default, while the family members who left, who built their own income, bought their own house, stopped costing the taxpayer for their day-to-day lives, are the ones being questioned over whether they deserve protection at all. That's not entitlement. That's the opposite of entitlement. That's a couple who remove themselves from the automatic benefit system and are now being asked to justify wanting to not get shot at. And then Dr. Dunlop says the line that should be on a T-shirt. She says the last thing anyone should want is to create another fissure, another opening, through which this couple can be hounded once more. She says plainly, it is not okay to hound individuals. Think about who's saying this. Not a Sussex Squad account. A royal historian on air, reminding a national radio audience that we have been here before, that we know exactly what happens when this family gets treated as fair game for pursuit. and that we don't like how much money they have is not a good enough reason to reopen that door. She closes her point by saying whatever gets worked out, through Ravek, through the palace, through whatever backroom conversation happens next, the bill needs to land fairly on the people actually responsible for it. Not dumped entirely on Harry and Meghan out of spite, not waved away by an institution that already funds security for family members who did far less to protect the monarchy's reputation over the last several years. Now James comes back in, and this is worth flagging because it's the sharpest version of the opposing argument you'll hear anywhere, and I want you equipped with it. He compares Harry to a footballer. You don't say to a professional athlete, you used the Football Association's platform to build your fame, so now the nation pays for your security forever. It's a clean analogy. It sounds airtight. Except it isn't, and here's why. A footballer wasn't born into a constitutional role that comes with inherited, documented, government-assessed threat exposure. A footballer can walk away from football entirely, and the danger evaporates with the retirement announcement. Harry cannot stop being the son of the king. He cannot unexist as a target for the exact people Ravek's own review process was built to assess. The risk isn't tied to his job, it's tied to his blood. That's the entire distinction the footballer analogy quietly erases. And it's why Dr. Dunlop's framing, Birthright, not brand, is the one that actually survives scrutiny. You can take a prince out of the palace. Her words, you cannot take the birthright out of the prince. So here's where I land, Squaddies, and here's what I want you taking into the comments on this one, calm and receipts. First, not reactive. This was never really a security funding debate. It was a referendum on whether Harry and Meghan are still allowed to be treated as what they are. A father, a mother, 2 children, and a genuine threat profile that a government review has already assessed. The double standard Dr. Dunlop named isn't subtle once you see it. Stay close to the institution, get security bundled in for free, no questions asked. Step back, build your own life, and suddenly your safety becomes a public debate topic on daytime radio. That's not fairness. That's punishment dressed up as fiscal responsibility. And when even the royal historians brought on air specifically to be neutral are saying this doesn't sit right, that's not a Sussex Squad opinion anymore. That's just true. Drop it in the comments if you caught the cognitive dissonance line and let me know. Should this go in the receipts playlist?